Hello, welcome to our little shop. Today we get to work on a really nice limited edition Korina Explorer. This guitar found its way in here from Texas to have some nut work done. Apparently it's difficult to find some way to do it. There's been a couple attempts made. This nut that someone has done is absolutely horrible. You see it doesn't fit square in a nut slot. There's a gap here. There's overhang over here. The nut doesn't really even fit on the neck. And the nut slots are spaced unevenly. Some of those are off as much as a 1/16 of an inch spacing wise, and the height is all very erratic. This guitar came in here late last week, and I had done it before he shipped it to take a truss rod tension off and take the toggle switch cap off. So we have a few things here we have to deal with. I've strung it back up and set his neck straight. He said he runs it with a very straight neck, and he wants to use between 9 gauge and 11 gauge strings depending on the tuning he's going to use. He plays 9s at full pitch. He uses 10s and 11s when he down tunes. So I'm going to have to cut a nut to that. I'm going to probably cut the nut using 11s, and then he won't have a problem when he goes down to anything else. He'll just have to readjust the neck. But this is pretty sad. This thing about not being able to get a nut made properly, this is Guitar 101. If you can't cut a nut, you don't need to be working on guitars. Apparently they've also chipped the headstock up here a couple places. He also mentioned to me that there were some gouges in the fingerboard. So we get this string out of here. Yeah. See, along each slot, they've actually missed the nut with a nut file and gouged out the fingerboard. I'll get a better look at those for you in a bit. He wants me to see if I can steam those out, do anything with those. So we'll see. So this is just a preliminary look for you. I will get back with some details here in a bit. Well, it's been just about an hour. It's taken me that long to get the nut slot here cleaned up because it was not level. It was crooked. It was actually lower on one side over here than it was the other. So it was actually angled on this side. We've actually got that squared up now to where the nut blank sets in it properly and flush. I've also rough shaped the nut blank. I'm using one of the nut blanks he sent with it. I have my own nylon nut blanks, but this is the same material. Poor guy's had to deal with enough stuff already. He doesn't need to pay for a nut blank. He already has 4 in a case of. So here was the nut I took off. You can see how much they had angled the side of it here to try to make up for the see if we can get you a look at it. There you can see. Try to make up for the crooked nut slot. But you get looking at this nut, and you can see that the slots are way too deep on the base side. Actually, they're deep all over. But they're not actually too deep. It's just the top of the nut was never cut down properly. You can see this entire nut is not square. So the first thing I did was made sure that this blank was proper thickness and square on the bottom. You can see I've marked the treble side of the top to make sure that I constantly put it back in the same way while I was checking it. But this is square and ready to be fitted a little bit more. Now we've got some other things to do before we can do that. He'd mentioned the gouging in the fingerboard, and if you look here, you will see if we can find it here for you. There we go. There's a good shot. They've slipped here with the nut file and gouged the fingerboard out here, here, and over here. So he asked if I could clean that up. I'm going to try to steam those out and level that back up. There's also a few places up here that need to be touched up. I need to do that before I can put the nut in. So let's get on with it. Oh, and over here, I'm soaking his truss rod nut in a little bit of acetone to get all the lacquer off of it. It needed to be cleaned up really good. We're going to get it to work better. It didn't work very well. So, like I say, nut slots all cleaned up and all that. So, let's get back to it. Okay, well, we've got the fingerboard cleaned up. You can see where all the gouges here were at. We actually filled them. Had to swell them out some, but since they were actually gouges and not dents, they didn't swell out as much as we'd like, so I had to fill them a little bit, but they're invisible. So that's done. I actually also did a dent up here in his fingerboard that he had also. So we have our nut fitted. It's clamped. We're going to let it dry for a little while. I'm going to do some cleanup here, do a couple other things while I'm waiting for that to set up. We have our truss rod nut back on. It cleaned up really well, cleaned the threads and stuff out on it, and lubed it and got it on. It works much better. So we've got to wait a little bit here. I'm going to get about half hour in here for this to dry, and then we can carry on. So I'm going to clean up here a little bit and do a couple other things and get back to it. It's been just a little bit longer, and I wanted to let you know I've got the nut roughed in here. The edges are very smooth to the side of the neck. It's almost perfect, but we leave a little bit more fitting for later. We want that to feel like it was molded into the neck. We want to feel like it's one piece, not something someone has added on later that doesn't fit. Something else I want to mention to you, if you look right here, you'll see there's some tape. I normally don't do that, but this is just to point out that if you're a novice at making nuts, if you put a couple pieces of tape on the front and back side of it, if you slip, you won't bar anything up. So there's a tip for you. Like I said, I just did that for this video since this one had been damaged. Another thing is I measure in a specific amount from each side of the nut here for each outside string, calculate the spacing I need, and then space it off with calipers. That way I can custom fit a nut for any guitar that I'm doing. Sometimes just because it's a Les Paul doesn't mean a pre-notched nut will fit, because it's not. And in this case, you know, it's not a Les Paul, it's an Explorer. But anyway, this is why I don't care for pre-cut nuts. I like to make the entire nut from start to finish. It fits the guitar then. So I'm going to string this up and start cutting these nut slots. Like I said, I've just got them started. I've done the spacing. I've started slotting them. We're going to get it strung up here, get his neck adjusted, get the bridge height the way we want it, and then we'll start cutting nut slots. Alright, well, I have strung it up with a sacrificial set of 11 gauge strings, adjusted his neck. He runs a dead straight neck, so that's what I've done. Adjusted it dead straight and cut the nut slots, and I actually have cut them low for him. He was complaining about intonation problems with the previous nut, which I could see, but I actually checked and double checked and triple checked this guitar to make sure that the intonation at the first fret was perfect. So I'm going to take these strings off and finish up my shaping of this nut. We've got a lot more to do here, but we're winding it down. I thought I'd give you another look at this nut before we finish things up here. See, it blends into this side of the neck rather well. This Explorer is a little tough to do because the fingerboard is actually not straight. Actually, right through this area and this area, the fingerboard actually fans out a little bit. So that's caused a little bit of trouble. But we managed. So anyway, we've got our nut done here. Look at that side, give you a look at that side. Give you a look at this side. You see it actually fits much better in a slot now. Like I say, the slot was not level, so that had to be leveled up for anything to be done. The big gap over here on this side that was there originally because of the angle of the slot is also gone. So anyway, kind of hard to manhandle this guitar with one hand. It's a little unwieldy. Anyway, we've cleaned up a lot of stuff here. Man, that Brazilian board's pretty, isn't it? It's a shame they didn't take the planer marks out of it. Anyway, so you can see where I've taken care of the gouges that were here. I also did one back here. Where is it? It was right here. There was actually a dent in the fingerboard there for some reason too. But we got that all cleaned up. So we're going to string this back up here and finish it up and get it ready to pack back up. Well, we have an Explorer all finished up. I've restring it with 9s, checked it all back out, cleaned it up, finished rubbing out some touch-ups up here. We're good to go. You see a little red mark there on a truss rod nut. I actually did that as an indication for him. We're going to loosen the truss rod up to ship it back, and I will let him know to put that dead center when he tightens it back up to get him in the ballpark of where I had it with the straight neck, so he doesn't have to chase it around all over. But there is our new nylon nut. You can see his string gouges are all gone, or the nut file gouges, and a few other things we took care of here and there. But I'm going to pack this up and get it ready to put back on a brown truck back to Texas. Hopefully this will please him. So thanks for watching. Till next time, play nice